Hello, everyone who is watching this. It's very exciting to be here. I'm Henry. You may know me from the Kingmaker Histories, Less is Morgue, Mayfair Watcher Society, or if you're a YouTube fan from the We Are Not Alive YouTube channel. And without any further ado, we're here today to talk about character, which is a subject that I always love discussing because I think there are two kinds of writers. There are plot first writers and there are character first writers. And while I can be as compelled and drawn in by an interesting plot as the next person, I'm definitely both character first in how I like to write and how I engage with other people's art. And today I wanted to sort of give my 2 cents on what it takes to create a character that is really memorable, that audiences will really connect with, and how you can leverage some of the unique traits of audio fiction, a medium that we all love here, to do that to its maximum potential. And if you have any questions throughout, just send those to me during the thing, and the wonderful mod I'm working with here, Quills, will give those to me at the end. Hello, Endwitch Cat Possum. Hello, Aquadrop25. Oh, wonderful live audience interaction. How exciting. Okay, so I think what I want to start with is how do you know when you've found a character that you truly love? Whether it's one that you've written or whether it's one that you've encountered in a piece of art that isn't yours. The kind of character that just makes you want to see more of them, even if you're making the media that you want to see more of, like fanfic or fan art or theories or headcanons, all of the things that we kind of dream that audience members will someday make about our work. And for me, I think it is when you are listening to a piece of music and you are seeing the characters do things to it, having a little music video in your head. That's how you know when you've got one that stuck with you. Same for when you see a meme and you think that's so them, or when you see someone else kind of suggest something about the character and you have that they would not fucking say that reaction. I really hope I'm allowed to swear. I didn't ask in advance. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. So, oh, wonderful. Yep. Okay, so I think we'll start with writing, but crucially, something that I really want to stress in this talk is that characters are made by so much more than just the way they're written. And I think you can, in fact, leverage some really unique traits by working closely with your actors while doing it. And I'm going to give you some examples of how I've done this in my own work, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, let's talk about writing. The first piece of advice I want to give you with regards to characters in this particular direction is one of the most common pieces of advice you'll see on the internet is you have to make your character likable. And that is something that I'll admit I categorically disagree with. Now, this does not mean that, oh, to have a good character, you need to make them like a really detestable individual. Well, you can. There's plenty of characters that are detestable that we're all compelled by in fiction. But what I would say is, rather than trying to make the character someone that you would want to hang out with in real life, for example, that kind of likable of if they were transposed into the real world exactly as is, they would seem like a cool, good person. Instead, I would say try to make them fascinating. Make them someone that is compelling, that you want to know more about. And again, that's something that I'm going to substantiate a little bit and kind of go into more detail on how you can do that. So, I think the first key to having a really fascinating character is pretty basic, but give them a goal and make them highly motivated to get it. And this can be whether you're thinking of the kind of like One Piece style, their life's dream that they want to accomplish, or something that just within the scope of this narrative, whether it's like escape from a certain place, stop a certain person, antagonist, villain, whatever. Give them a goal and give them a reason to care a great deal about it. And that goal doesn't even have to be a nice thing. You could be writing a character that wants world domination, one that wants revenge on someone, one that wants to, I don't know if you're telling a crime story, like conquer a certain piece of territory in a kind of gang war scenario. But whatever it is, make them really, really want it. And if you make them try hard enough and keep trying to get this goal, the audience will start to want it for them, even if, like I said, it's something kind of morally reprehensible. But motivation isn't enough. It's a good baseline. A character who isn't driven, who doesn't want things, isn't a character at all. It's an often given piece of advice that people don't even enter a conversation unless they want something, even if what they want out of that conversation is a sense of connection, a sense of companionship. So keep that in mind whenever you're writing these characters. But if you really want to get people feeling curious about the characters you're writing, a very quick way of doing this is giving them a clever and surprising contradiction. Like, for example, let's say you're writing a character who is like a sort of tough, no nonsense action hero. Maybe they also really love kind of traditionally quote unquote feminine films. They love romantic comedies. They love kind of soppy melodramatic tragedies. It's something that sort of takes them out of the expectations. If you're going to have a serial killer, make them an animal lover. And you might wonder, okay, well, that's interesting. Why would they have that contradiction? Why do they apply a different standard? Like, whatever kind of archetype you're going for, and almost any character, no matter how interesting and original, will fall into that kind of archetypal style of storytelling. Give them a little bit of a twist in the tale, something that makes the audience think, oh, that goes against what my expectations would be for who this kind of person is. It's why we love the thief with a heart of gold. It's why we love the person who puts on a smiling face but is a kind of dangerous and Machiavellian individual underneath. We want to get to the heart of that contradiction. But I think more than just contradiction, it's really valuable to give your character a philosophy and a worldview. Give them something that they believe. And I don't necessarily mean this in the sense of like, oh, they're an existentialist, they're a nihilist, they believe in like deontology or consequentialism, though they can be if that's the kind of story you're telling. But just give your character beliefs about the world. Give them a moral code, even if that moral code is might makes right. I deserve things more than other people. If you're like writing a kind of dark anti-hero or a villain, but just give them something that they believe, because I don't think you will meet a person who goes through the world without believing in things. Even if someone is like, oh, I'm staunchly apolitical, to be apolitical in this world of ours is a political decision. And you maybe want to dissect, well, okay, what place of privilege is this character in to believe that they have the right to be apolitical, that they don't feel like they're in danger under current systems of power. These are all things that could make a character interesting, that could make them compelling, and make them feel like a real person who, despite being just a series of lines read by an actor and produced in audio with sound or maybe music, they will feel like this real, tangible individual. And I would also say, something that kind of goes against the grain of a lot of advice I've seen on the internet in the last few years. There has been this like horrible, toxic Mary Sue discourse, which not only has a lot of its roots in a really kind of pernicious kind of sexism that is a conversation for another day, but I think it's created this idea that it's like bad or cringe to give your characters admirable traits, to give them skills that people will accuse them of being like a self insert or wish fulfillment. And believe me, anyone who makes criticisms like that of art is not an audience member you want to listen to anyway. They're someone who is engaging with art in bad faith. I think the most compelling characters are ones that will give you a split view of interesting skills, interesting talents, interesting qualities that are balanced out by equally compelling flaws. And a lot of the time, you will see when you're writing a character how if you figure out a character's virtues, you know their flaws. Like a character, for example, who is really passionate and loyal and will like do anything for their friends might also be a character who is reckless and too quick to anger and who can easily be kind of tricked or trapped in bad situations, or maybe a character who conversely is very like intellectual, is very calculating, may also be someone who is perhaps reluctant to start, someone who maybe doesn't have enough sympathy and care for the people around them. It's kind of like how if you draw like half of a square, you know, one line, two line, three lines on a piece of paper, and then put a mirror in the middle, you see the whole square in the mirror. I think it's very constructive to look at character positive and negative traits in the same way and explore those. And thank you. I'm glad you like that analogy. um, and I would also say another really interesting thing that I think people have a lot of discussions about is you want to give characters a compelling backstory. I'm a big believer in that. However, you want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of, well, two things that can be an issue with backstory, in my opinion. Trap number one is having your character do all of the most interesting things in their backstory. You know, someone who you get the sense that they were really interesting, they were really compelling to follow, but they don't do that now. If you've put interesting things in your character's backstory, make sure that when you are writing your narrative, you are giving them just as many compelling challenges, just as many compelling scenes and moments and ideas in the story that you're actually writing. I think the second trap is when you are writing a character backstory that may be very compelling, may be really interesting. Good night, Endwedge Cat Possum. I hope you enjoy the VOD. That may be really interesting, but it doesn't feel like they inform who the character actually is enough. Say, for example, you're writing a character who has a background in academia of some kind. Let's say they have a degree, master's, PhD in ancient Greek history or mythology. That's an interesting thing to give to a character backstory. But if you know anyone who has done a degree in something, they talk about it. It will inform their references when they think about dialogue. They will casually drop, analogies related to their field of expertise. And this is something also that connects to dialogue in really interesting ways. So you will hear people talk about dialect, which is how a person's background, where they come from, what kind of groups they may belong to culturally or ethnically, may inform the way they speak. Like Scots, for example, is a Scottish dialogue that has its own unique grammar structure. Same for AAVE for African American communities. These are all like unique forms of dialect for these different cultures. But there is also a lesser discussed concept called sociolect. And sociolect is this idea of how a character talks related to their kind of their social class, the job that they have, who they surround themselves with. A character who is a scientist, for example, that's their reference point. That's how they approach the world. What kind of scientist are they? Are they a biologist? What kind of biologist are they? Do they specialize in mammals, bacteria, virology? Who knows? But it's going to inform how they think about things because of how much mental real estate that takes up. And if you want a character that feels very real, that feels very tangible, those are all really good things to consider when writing their backstory and how it will make them act and interact with people. Same as a person who's had a very privileged backstory, someone who had parents who loved them, someone who always had enough money. They may be surprised to learn the full extent to which other people have struggled in their life. Or, for example, if you have a character who, not to get too dark here, but had a background of like suffering from abuse, that may lead to trust issues or difficulties in relationships because they haven't had those like models of healthy behavior unless perhaps they've been in therapy. But if a character has been in therapy, that will inform how they interact, the way that they look at the world. And I would also say what links to this is you can tell us a lot about a character through compelling small choices. Now, you can say the same of people in real life, but even more so with a character who is created. If you tell us that a character likes a certain food, say they like pizza, it's like, well, okay, why do they like pizza? Did they love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up? And how does that inform who the rest of they are? Maybe they come from an Italian background. Maybe they come from a city famous for its pizzas, like New York or Chicago. It's all like same as let's take a random example. Say the one I've written down in my notebook here would be a good one. Vegetarianism. People can go vegetarian in real life for a variety of reasons, and the same is true of fictional characters. But in the realm of fiction, you can use this as a kind of fulcrum point to tell us more. Let's take this vegetarian character. Maybe they're vegetarian because they care a great deal about animals and the environment. Maybe that's the kind of person they are, and you can span that out. Maybe they have kind of medical issues that means for whatever reason they can't have like animal products. That's an interesting thing to explore. How does that feed into it? Maybe they're the kind of person who just prefers it in terms of taste, or maybe they're the kind of person who thinks that making this choice makes them a better person than people who haven't made that choice. These are all ways that you can create like 4 or 5 different characters starting from one incredibly simple decision. I would also say a really valuable thing to remember is that it's not just how you build the characters themselves, it's how they play into the narrative. Take your characters out of their comfort zones, pull the fish out of the water, because ultimately, the more a character has to encounter strange and alien situations, the more we're going to see out of them. Ditto for making each relationship um, kind of different and distinct. A character will talk to their mother differently than they talk to their boss or their best friend or like an intimate romantic partner or an enemy. It's called code switching. We do it all the time in real life. And you can get to know a character better. If we have any TTRPG fans in the audience right now, which I think, given this is an audio fiction convention, I think there's a very good chance we do. In Vampire the Masquerade, they put a lot of emphasis on the character web, on how the relationships with other characters build the character that you've got. Yep. Thank you, non-binary Mossman. You're very correct. And I think that's a really good thing to take account of. That just like in real life, no character should be an island. Our connections to other people, to our world, to our communities, to the challenges we face, and to what we aspire to is what builds us. It's the same as, for example, how can you ever really say a character is a good person if they haven't been put in a situation where they've had to make a difficult moral choice? And I think it's worthwhile putting your characters in difficult moral choices all the time. And I'm not saying as well that they should always have the right answer to those choices, because that's moral complexity. I think all of us in life at times have been selfish, have done things that in hindsight we wish we hadn't done, had taken the path that benefited ourselves at the expense of others. And How will a character react to that? Will they justify it? Will they feel guilty about it? Will they even think about it? These are all good questions. But that is my kind of crash course on the writing element. For the rest of it, I want to talk a little bit about casting, recording, and producing. And if anyone has any specific questions regarding what I just said, I'll answer those if you post them in the chat. And if not, that's fine too. I'll keep on going. So, my biggest upcoming show at the moment is Killjam Triple X, which I'm which I'm co-creating rather with the wonderful Addison Peacock, who has been in Too Many Things to List, with Meg, my fiance of the Kingmaker Histories of Less is Morgue, as the audio engineer behind it all. And for the two main characters, Faustina and Bellamy, I have really had wonderful success in collaborating with the actors in building those characters. Faustina, our main character, is played by Addison, and Bellamy, the other main character, is played by the excellent Zooey LeFou, who you will have heard in the Kingmaker Histories and in the really good Shells Lake, Another Crab's Treasure. And while, of course, different actors will have different levels of comfort with this kind of thing, if you are friends with the actors in question, ask them to pitch in. There are ways in which we have made these characters more similar to their actors in a way that has enriched both the performances and the writing and editing. I personally think while there are some writers who are real control freaks around their material, I'm not one of those people. I believe in collaboration. I love ad-libbing. I love having actors involved in the editing and having them say, okay, well, what's your headcanon about these characters? Because A, you will get better performances in a purely practical term if actors feel a sense of ownership over their characters. But at the end of the day, the characters are going to feel more real and more textured. We've done the same for the Kingmaker Histories, and we did the same for our show Less is Morgue back in the day as well. There was a lot of traits that the actors Lexi Bristow, who played Riley, and Meg, who played Evelyn, that we had kind of informed those that really enhanced them. And I honestly think that while if you've spent a lot of time with characters, it can feel like, no, only I know them, only I have this perspective. You are going to have so much fun letting other people into the sandbox to play with the toys. And I think it makes characters feel, frankly, less written, especially if you let actors garnish their lines a little bit, let them ad-lib when they think of a fun line. If they have an idea of how to do it differently than you would have imagined, do it both ways and then see what works after. You will have wonderful, wonderful success doing it like that 9 times out of 10, especially if you're working with friends. I would also say a really important thing to do in casting is, when possible, cast people who naturally have different sounding voices to each other. I think one of the biggest barriers in kind of connecting to characters in audio drama, and this is a problem that is unique to audio dramas and Ryan Murphy shows when he casts like 50 men who all look exactly the same. It's something where it is difficult to really connect to one character if you have a hard time telling them apart, keeping track of each one. And this is very easy to do without a kind of distinction in the voice and a visual component. Okay, I'm seeing some questions. We have, is there a line between using a backstory point to inform a character's personality versus having it become their personality? That's a really good question. I would say that, to be honest, it's quite a fluid thing, because ultimately, in some shows, if you are writing something that, for example, has a narrator, which can help you contextualize flashbacks. We can even see things that happen in a character's backstory, which I think can enrich it much more than us just being informed about the fact that it's happened. Um, I'm just hearing Aquadrop25 saying, please, I need to hear the differences. Which differences are those? I think I might be talking really fast. If you expand on that question, I'll be able to go back to it. But no, I'm a huge believer in the importance of casting. I think oftentimes audio dramas can be a little bit homogenized in terms of the accents that you see, for example. A lot of audio dramas you will either see with a kind of primarily British or American cast, which is really limiting when there are so many voice actors with wonderful, unique, natural voices out there. Like, for example, when Meg was writing the Kingmaker histories, which you should all listen to if you haven't, one of the three main characters, Eisen, was not written to have a Scottish accent, but the wonderful actor that we ended up casting to Kai Nazir is a Scottish man, and as a result, him having that accent has been built into the dialogue and has informed the character and is so like kind of strange and distinct and memorable for the kind of character he is, who is not even like textually Scottish in it. It's just one more thing to help you remember him and set him apart from the rest of the cast. Oh, from Podcast Book Club, does it help or hinder to have a VA in mind when creating a character? Personally, I love to have a VA in mind. It might be a personal bias because I love working with my friends. But I often find it is way easier to write for audio drama when you can picture the voice. And as well, it will give you a much better sense of the comfort level that characters will have. Again, in my upcoming show with Addison Peacock, Killjam Triple X, it goes into some really kind of strange and dark territory. And there's stuff that I'm not entirely sure that we would have been comfortable asking actors who we didn't know quite as well to sort of perform. But having Addison and our other really good friend Zooey as the two main characters created a really valuable bond of trust that let us go to those places with consistent, like, are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? Because it's always better to ask than to be unsure, because, you know, we don't want to make anyone uncomfortable making things. I'm a huge believer in shows are always better when everyone involved is having a good time. But that is basically the extent of what I had prepared. I'm now just going to answer any questions that people have. So feel free to throw questions in there. Already seeing some down there, very exciting. And then I will love and leave you wonderful people to prepare for the next one. But yes, any questions you have, speak now or forever hold your peace. First, from Non-Binary Mossman, sort of a broad topic, do you have anything you'd like to say on setting up different character personalities to interact? No, I think that is a really good question. I think it is all a matter of circumstance, because no one ever meets anyone in like a blank white room in real life. You know, it's we are all constantly being put in situations, and to get the best out of your characters, especially when they have contrasting personalities, I would say make sure to purposefully put them in situations where they will have to like come to blows over this thing, whether it's not necessarily literally, but hey, sometimes literally. For example, if they have okay, here's kind of a weird example, but if you have two characters with two really different personalities, let's say they're going to a movie theater, write their argument on picking the movie. That's a great little writing exercise. Ditto for what restaurant should they go through. Ditto for if you're writing something that is, say, more like fantastical, adventurous, action-driven. People might have different like strategies and plans. It's a kind of like Batman Superman thing. Because of their differences, they're not going to solve problems in the same way. How do they walk into a room? How do they settle an argument? I think it really is all about just putting them in these kinds of situations where they get to show the contrast. I think a really popular show at the moment that I'll use as an example is I don't know if we have any fans of the Amazing Digital Circus in here. Each one of the main characters in that represent kind of a broad character archetype. And every episode of the show is putting them in a sort of different strange situation where we're seeing the characters bounce off of each other, which can lead to conflict and collaboration in varying degrees. And my kind of sinister. Oh, sorry for knocking the mic. My sinister ulterior motive for bringing up the Amazing Digital Circus is that we also have one of the actors in it, Jack Hawkins, who plays Gummy Goo in that show. If you know, you know. In the upcoming show. No, I think you should. I think you should, Astrofire. It is very much worth checking out. But yeah, no, I think what I will round this talk up with, if we don't have any sort of last lingering questions, is at the end of the day, if you write a character that you love and you write them as well as you can, there is a good chance that the other people like you, and we live in a world of nearly 9 billion people, there are other people like you. When they find this character, they will love them. Write sincerely, write for yourself. Never write cynically. Never write a character that you wouldn't love if you hadn't discovered them in a piece of fiction. Because at the end of the day, writing characters that you love, even if they never reach the audience that you hope, is its own reward. And every time you do it, every time you write a new character and you see how people react to them, whether that's audiences, whether that's your friends, whether that's even the things you discover about yourself as you're going through it, or what your voice actors do, you'll learn more and you'll be better at the next one. Thank you so much for listening. It's been lovely, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. You can find me on Tumblr at Rube Deck Killer Official. And you can find me ranting about other creative stuff on the We Are Not Alive YouTube channel. Thank you. Have a lovely day.